Tonight, special bulletin on Israel-Gaza war. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Aisha Ashraf. Israeli warplanes continue bombing Gaza Strip in Palestine for the fourth consecutive day. Israeli airstrikes have hit a marketplace. Several schools and hospitals have also been targeted. Since Israel has declared war on Hamas, 7 mosques have been destroyed. The Al Abbas Mosque is the latest to be targeted. Israel had previously hit the Al Susi, Al Yarmouk, Al Amin Muhammad, Ahmad Yassin, Al Habib Muhammad, and Al Garbi mosques in Gaza. The Israeli army's intensified attacks on the Gaza Strip continue. Israeli planes dropped bombs at the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt twice on Tuesday, shortly after urging Palestinians in Gaza to evacuate through that crossing to Egypt. This has hindered critical movement at the Rafah border. 7 Palestinian journalists have been killed in the Israeli airstrikes. At least 830 Palestinians have been killed. 4,000 have been wounded in the ongoing airstrikes. Gaza's health ministry says 140 children and 120 women have died. Residents say it was a long and ferocious night, with Israeli planes coming in droves and bombing residential areas, turning them into rubble. The strikes are in response to a multi-pronged attack on Israel by Palestinian factions. Security has been bolstered at Israel's boundary with Gaza, but concerns remain about Palestinian fighters inside Israel's borders. On the diplomatic front, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen held discussions on the situation and hostages in Gaza. Media reports show Hamas has taken 150 hostages. Palestinian resistance group Hamas launched Operation Al-Aqsa Flood against Israel early Saturday, firing a barrage of rockets. It said the surprise attack was in response to the storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied East Jerusalem and increased settler violence. In retaliation, the Israeli army launched Operation Swords of Iron against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Large pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel rallies are taking place in different parts of Canada following Israel-Hamas war in Middle East. There has been a massive gathering Monday in Toronto's Nathan Phillips Square in support of Palestinians. Nearly 1,000 protesters gathered, waving Palestinian flags. The protesters said they were supporting Palestine and its people, and not Hamas. Hamas is the armed resistance group against Israeli occupation. It is one of the 2 major political parties in Palestine. Currently, it governs 2 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. During the peaceful demonstration, there was a massive police presence in the area. Pro-Palestinian protests were also Monday in Calgary, Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Halifax. A number of pro-Israel rallies were also held in different cities in Canada. However, the ones supporting the Palestine cause have been criticized by some Jewish organizations and Canadian politicians. In a tweet, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau calls these rallies as a glorification of violence. He says he strongly condemns these demonstrations supporting the actions of Hamas. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow has spoken out against the pro-Palestine rally. She says the rally is, quote, glorifying the actions of the Palestinian resistance group. On Sunday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford expressed his support for Israel. A pro-Israel rally took place in Toronto. The event, titled Emergency Rally for the People of Israel, was attended by key political figures. In light of the current situations, flags at Toronto City Hall and other municipal buildings are flying at half-mast. The UN Security Council meeting to address the escalating conflict between Israel and Gaza has ended without issuing any joint statement. More than 1,100 deaths have been reported since Hamas attacked Israeli towns this past Saturday. Israel has responded by declaring war against Hamas and pounding densely populated areas in Gaza with heavy airstrikes. So far, Israel's forces have killed more than 800 Palestinians. The US had called on all 15 members of the council to condemn Hamas's actions. The meeting, which lasted about 90 minutes, included a briefing by United Nations Middle East peace envoy Turvey Naslan. Russia's UN ambassador has stressed the need for an immediate ceasefire and negotiations. The UAE expects further UN Security Council discussions on the crisis while stressing the importance of a two-state solution. Palestinian ambassador Riyad Mansour has called for an end to the Israeli occupation. In an open letter to the UN Security Council ahead of the meeting, 3 Palestinian human rights groups have accused the United Nations of inaction and complicity. On the other hand, Israel's UN ambassador Gilad Erdan showed graphic images of Israelis taken hostage by Hamas. He called for international condemnation and support. Amid this conflict, there are underlying discussions about normalizing relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which the United States supports in return for a defense agreement. In recent discussions in Moscow, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul-Gheit have urged for an immediate end to the ongoing Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Lavrov underscores the need to not only halt the violence, but also to address factors preventing a lasting resolution to the Palestinian issue. The two leaders, Lavrov and Abul-Gheit, are calling for an immediate ceasefire. They express deep concern for the escalating conflict potential along the Israeli-Lebanese border. Lavrov criticizes the West for its one-sided stance, emphasizing the urgency to implement a two-state solution as outlined by the UN. The Arab League has praised Russia's clear stance on the issue. It acknowledges its influential role in various Arab concerns, such as in Syria, Libya, and Sudan. China is emphasizing the importance of a two-state solution to address the ongoing conflict between Palestine and Israel. The spokeswoman for China's foreign ministry says China is on the side of justice and fairness and has friendly ties with both nations. In response to Western pressure to condemn Palestine, she has stressed that China opposes any form of violence. She says China calls for an urgent ceasefire. She says dialogue and negotiations are essential solutions. There are reports of a possible kidnapping of an Israeli Chinese woman by Hamas. The spokeswoman said that Beijing is informed about the kidnapping. However, she did not provide further details. A senior writer at the American online news outlet The Intercept challenges the perception that the Hamas attack was Israel's 9/11 moment. The writer, John Schwartz, emphasizes that both the US and Israel have a history of using violence on different scales, and it is merely a matter of time before such violent policies invite retaliation. Schwartz points out the role of leadership in cultivating such conditions. In his article, he writes that the US played a part in nurturing Islamic opposition to the Soviet Union in the 1980s, while Israel indirectly encouraged the growth of Hamas to counter Fatah. He says these strategies, in hindsight, appear to have backfired. Schwartz says the leaders' incompetence and seeming indifference to impending threats are alarming. He mentions both President George W. Bush and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ignored intelligence warnings before the respective attacks on their nations. Schwartz, recounting his personal experience on the night of 9/11, has shared the collective fear of immediate terror and the fear of the actions of their own government in retaliation. The comparison between the Hamas attack and 9/11 has been reiterated by the Israeli ambassador to the UN, the Israeli military spokesperson, and even Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. These comparisons imply that just as the US reacted with large-scale military interventions following 9/11, leading to over 4.5 million deaths, Israel too is justified in taking whatever measures necessary in response to these attacks. The number of people dead and injured in last week's earthquake in Afghanistan has exceeded 4,000. An Afghan disaster management ministry spokesperson says around 2,000 houses in 20 villages of the Zindajan and Ghorian districts have been destroyed in the earthquake. He says the ministry is struggling to gather the exact figures of death and injured as rescuers scramble to pull out people trapped under the rubble. He is calling the international community to help Kabul in responding to the damage caused by the earthquake. The 6.2 magnitude earthquake struck the 2 districts of northwestern Herat province near the border with Iran on Saturday. Thank you for watching. Our news is produced by Muslim Network TV, which is a not-for-profit organization. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now, so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad.